Well, good morning again, Friendship Village, or afternoon, whenever you're listening to this podcast. This is the voice of Friendship Village, and we are coming at you from our elaborate studios on the second floor. And so we have a most interesting guest today, as I often say, because all of our guests are. To be a guest on this show, you gotta work through Mary, and she only picks the best. So that's just a little clue for this guest. And so today on the program, we're being sponsored by the administration, which includes, of course, Lisa, the CEO, and her staff of I don't know how many, maybe half a dozen. Somewhere in that neighborhood, but we are aware, and we do know that if it weren't for the administration staff, this place wouldn't work very well. So we appreciate you, Lisa, and all of your staff to keep us organized and on track. And so let me start before we introduce our guest with just a couple of quick jokes. Okay. Well, last year in Iowa, I read this the other day, there were 4,153 people who got married. Now, I don't want to cause any trouble, but shouldn't that be an even number? Makes you wonder. Okay. And last week a man knocked on my door, and he was soliciting in the neighborhood for contributions to help build a new community swimming pool, and he wondered if I would make a small donation. So I went out to the kitchen and came back and gave him a glass of water. Oh, I like that one. Okay, well, we have a guest. His name is Jim, and we want to know more about Jim, and so take it away, Mary.
Good morning or afternoon, whatever time we're listening to this. My guest today's name is Jim Thompson. He is from Cedar Falls. I have known Jim for over 30 years. He is a good friend of my family, and in a roundabout way, he's also godfather to my second grandson, Zachary Stan. So we have a lot of connection with Jim, and Jim has been a very active person, had interesting jobs, done interesting things.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My father passed away when I was 5, and my mom remarried after that, and we moved to a small town of Keystone, Iowa, and then we were there for a while and moved to Vinton, which is where I really grew up from 4th grade on.
Okay.
And went to all my schooling there, graduating from high school in Vinton, 1967.
Okay. And where did you go to college?
So after graduation, actually, I went to the Army. So I was drafted. There was no signing up for at that time. And so I went to the Army. I came home. Actually, I went to work at John Deere's after I got out of the Army. And then when I was 28 years old, I went to college, the University of Northern Iowa, looking to either do better at John Deere's or not stand in front of a machine, which was wearing me out.
Yes.
So I went to the University of Northern Iowa, graduating from there in 1982, which is also where I met my future wife, my wife now.
Right. And we'll back up just a minute. When you were in the military, did you serve just in the United States, or did you have some European serving?
So it was during the Vietnam conflict. I was drafted, and somehow I went to Germany during that time and served there for 18 months.
Okay.
So I was in the Army for 2 years.
What kind of job did you do in the Army?
So in the Army, my job title was a radio operator.
Okay.
And so it could have been anything from sitting in a big truck operating a radio to Had I been on the ground as a soldier in Vietnam, I would have had a small radio on my back, following some commanding officer around so that he could talk on the radio.
Yeah.
I would have been the guy with the big antenna over top of my head, which was never a good idea when you're...
Like, look at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was my job. I was glad to not be in Vietnam during that time. So we played war games for that year and a half while I was in Germany.
Good. I just kind of wanted to fill in the military part of it.
Yes.
So then after you graduated from college, what degrees did you have that entitled you to find a future?
So I had a degree from Northern Iowa in recreation therapy. I had become more active and discovered how leisure and recreation were significant in my own life, how important they were to each of us. And so then I had a degree in recreation therapy. And after I got out of college, I did leave John Deere's and went to work with that degree. I worked at Quakerdale Group Homes for about 5 years as the recreation director. For a good part of that time, for 54 teenagers that lived there. Wow. Not necessarily all at one time.
Now, were they mixed? Were they boys and girls?
Yes, boys and girls, and of different ages, all the way from 12 to, of course, 18 until they would age out. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting, challenging, very... I think I learned and really grew a lot. Being in there and seeing the challenges that those... Basically, it's called group foster care. So that there are not enough foster homes for children, and a lot of times that's what Quakerdale had become at that time, was a group foster home.
And
so these aren't necessarily adjudicated delinquent.
There was one cottage that was.
Okay.
And but the rest of the kids were not.
Yeah.
Right. Didn't mean they weren't challenging, and struggling, coming from broken homes quite often. So.
And Quakerdale is located where?
There's Quakerdale. The main campus for Quakerdale is in New... I'm sorry, it's next to Grundy Center.
Okay.
And in Waterloo, there's one. There's also a campus in Marshalltown.
Okay.
Okay.
I knew it was close to Waterloo, some of them.
Yeah, and so there's a campus in Waterloo. It has changed over time, but it still exists, very close to East High in Waterloo.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I left there and was hired at Covenant Medical Center in 1991. And so I went there and started working as a recreation therapist on a open substance abuse program there for both adolescents and adults. Mm-hmm. And so I was the recreation person in that setting for both adolescents and adults, and still was able to do quite a bit of outdoor things with those folks as well as indoor activities. Also during that time it changed a bit, and then I also started doing as a recreation therapist for a locked mental health unit for both adults and adolescents. Okay. And so that was really my long-term career, was to work for Covenant in substance abuse and locked mental health through really mostly through my retirement.
Right.
And so I worked there about 25 years doing that.
Okay.
And your wife is a nurse.
Wife is she's a nurse, but she has a degree from the university in health education.
Right.
And so so she worked at the university for 37 years at the university, and she retired about 2 years ago. I retired about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So
We'll back up just a little bit again too, because of your athletic work, and you are a great proponent of going on RAGBRAI.
yes. So over all those years, I was also a runner and really active in running, but then also bicycling as well. So I went on RAGBRAI 9 and 10, and then later on RAGBRAI 15 and 16, which is a long time ago. RAGBRAI is now in like RAGBRAI 50 or 49 or something like that. Yeah. And so it was quite a while ago. But yes, I did go on RAGBRAI. It was quite the experience to do that.
People could write a book of their travels on RAGBRAI, I'm sure, because there is so much that you encounter, so much to do, and very, very interesting. And the thing about it is, he went on RAGBRAI with my son-in-law, David Stamp. They enjoyed some time together.
Mm-hmm. We did. So David and I were very compatible to be on RAGBRAI together. It really helps if you get yourself up early and get going and beat the heat of the day and the crowds of the day. And so we did. That worked out just really good for us to do.
And you've traveled north, middle Iowa, southern Iowa, all the different areas of Iowa throughout those years.
Every hill they could find, we were we were on, I think. Yes.
And when did you meet my son-in-law to get acquainted and do this?
Well, my wife and I have 3 daughters that are now in their kind of early into mid-30s, and David and his wife Linda, your daughter, had 3 boys and approximately the same age. So we knew each other when those children were small, and they were playing together. So we'll jump back into that 30 some years ago. My wife and I had been married 37 years.
And you two lived close?
We lived close enough into the metro area. Okay. And so we had other mutual friends that we would get together with that also had some small children, and so I think we all just gathered around that, especially when you have young children. That dictates about how much you get to do. So
did your children sort of adopt your interest in physical therapy, activity, action, running?
Well, when the girls were young, 2 of the 3 girls were very active in soccer.
Okay.
So 2 of them do bicycle quite a bit. I have a son-in-law that's probably grabbed bicycling more than they have. But they are, 2 of the 3 are very active in a variety of things. We also like to hike and.
Okay.
And you've traveled quite a bit too, because I've seen a lot of your pictures on Facebook of different areas that you've gone and hiked and traveled and climbed some mountains type places.
Yes, we have. Since we've had the time, quite a bit of the time, even before I retired. My wife did not work in the summers, so we could travel then. But even now, and we would travel out west. We really embraced Colorado for a long time. And we've also traveled into Utah. Utah has 9 national parks, and so we've traveled into many of the areas of Utah to hike in there. And then the 1 daughter and our 3 grandchildren live in California now, which is very inconvenient, and almost as bad as New York City.
Right,
right. So we now center a lot of our traveling towards California to visit them, but then there's also Yosemite National Park, and we look forward to going to the Redwoods there as well, and continue to move up the coast. So yeah, a lot of hiking now and in the future.
Right, that's what's going to keep this man fit and trim.
Absolutely.
We don't have video that we're showing, but he is a very trim person.
Okay.
Keeping in good health, we hope.
Hey, I'd like to pause here for just a minute and remind our listeners that this edition of The Voice of Friendship Village is being brought to you by the administration staff here at Friendship Village. So we just acknowledge their good work, take off our hats, and salute them, and thank them for the good work that they do for the rest of us. We've just been through some changes with people moving from this building to that building, and from what all I've heard, the move went rather smoothly, and people found the right place, and the staff was very helpful. We know that was likely spearheaded or at least involved with the administration staff. So we thank you, Lisa, and all the others who are serving in that capacity. And if I could, let me just take a moment, because we want to educate our listeners as well as entertain. And so I have a recent edition of Reminisce magazine before me, and it's kind of an interesting thing. Let's see. Let's think back of 1956. How old were you, Mary, back then?
About 2020.
About 2020.
20. I was
120.
I was 20.
Okay. Well, and I was about 14. So.
1956 is when I met my husband.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And anyway, some important things happened. One of the things that kind of just grabbed my attention was the idea that the Summer Olympics in that year were held in Melbourne, Australia. Now let's just remind ourselves that when it's winter in this country, it's summer in Australia.
Okay.
So the Summer Games happened in December of the year. So that must have been kind of an interesting sight. I imagine they caught some of that on TV.
Right.
But so anyway, the Summer Olympics were held not in the summer but in December in 1956 as well. CBS launched the 2 soap operas. That was the beginning of soap operas. Things like As the World Turns, or as I've heard somebody say, As the Summit Turns. Yeah. And Edge of Night were 2 dramas that were presented to this country in 1956. And so one of the main movies, you're probably familiar with this, was High Society. Do you remember that?
Yes, with
Mary?
Bing Crosby.
Bing Crosby and
Grace Kelly.
Frank Sinatra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's about as much education as I think we need today. So let's get on with our interview with Jim. Jim's active life has brought him here and there and everywhere. And I just wanted Jim to know that I used to work at Eldora at the training school.
Okay.
That was my first job after college.
Yeah.
So, and that was a challenge and very interesting. And
Because Phil was a counselor.
I had to sort of grow up real quick.
Yes.
To fit in there. But some of the people that came to our place had been to yours, or vice versa. You know.
Right.
Yeah. So,
And how long did you work at Quakerdale?
I was there for approximately 6 years.
Okay.
Right. It was during a time, too, where they were getting better established in Waterloo. They were tearing down some old houses and then building brand new facilities and a brand new office. And I was so excited when they built a brand new office building with a gymnasium.
Mm-hmm.
And so now in the wintertime I could do other things indoors. Otherwise, recreation, football and everything we did was outside in the snow.
Right.
And,
right.
But
and
it
I
was
think
great.
in the recreation field, just from my perspective, for the challenging people that you worked with, it's so good for them. It exerts an energy that is different than just your day-to-day energy. You get them out there and you give them different types of feats to do that it's good for their mind and their body.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And as we talked about Ragbri, there was a time I'm remembering where 2 different summers we took small groups of those Quakerdale teenagers on Ragbri for a day.
Oh,
and
right.
so that allowed us to train ahead of time. We had some bicycles that had been donated and then someone that could repair and keep them in good order. And so then we would take 6 or 7 of those teenagers on Ragbri, and they would ride a good most of that day, 40, 50 miles.
That would be wonderful for
Right,
them. Wonderful.
and a great accomplishment for them, and something that they would never have done
No.
any other time. They wouldn't have had the structure and support for that. They wouldn't have had a bicycle that would have gone that far.
Right.
And so that was great. Great times for them, and enjoyable for us as staff to go with them and do that too.
Jim, I would think that in the background of your mind and your training and whatever, you definitely see a connection between physical recreation and mental health.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. For those, I think a lot of times those teenagers in particular, or even as I got with adults and substance abuse and mental health, a lot of times people just didn't know how to be more active. They didn't know how to get out and move and exercise, or they didn't have resources to do it. And so especially people that struggled with depression, would be very, very significant if they can just get out and move and walk a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so we would really see that.
Okay.
But with the teenagers, they would be involved in recreation with me, but they would also then be involved many times with sports and other activities in the school then too, and they needed the confidence to go in and do that, and the discipline to just be able to do that and not get in trouble in the basketball team or in the classroom or something like that.
Did you have classrooms there, or did they mainstream into the regular school besides living at Quakerdale?
They did mainstream into the regular school, though there was an education director there because of so many kids. They had registration and problems in school and success in school. So there was an actual education director there, and sometimes they would have kids that would come in late or certain times that couldn't be mainstreamed into the school right away, and so they would have a classroom for a handful of kids. Also if kids were kicked out for a week or a few days or something like that, then they would do that. As well.
And have you kept in contact with any of your students or your clients over the years, or did they just kind of go on their own way?
No, I think they just kind of faded and went their own way. Some of the other staff I've connected with here and there, and seen them. The staff are aging just like I am, so therefore a lot of those folks have retired as well.
Right. It's probably changed a lot, but yet hopefully still going strong in all the things that you had done.
Right. One of the couples that I worked with, his name was Dan, and his wife's name is Lisa. And Lisa is the director here now.
And her husband?
And her husband,
yes,
Dan had passed away.
Yes, we knew them.
He was at mental health here. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh.
And so I worked with them first when they were house parents at Quakerdale.
Oh,
And
we didn't know that.
Yes, I just remembered it. And they were just wonderful with kids as house parents. They just were so confident, raising their own daughters in the midst of that, for a little while. And then eventually Dan went on to be a social worker at Quakerdale and come out of being a cottage house parent.
Well, we hope Lisa listens to this and finds out that she was mentioned in here.
That's right.
Yeah.
They were both
Wonderful.
wonderful to work with.
Right. Well, we know it's a small world. We've come to that conclusion many times.
That it is.
When we've come across different people that we know, have known, and
we'll have to make sure that we make her aware that we're talking with Jim here today.
Yes. So you, up to the future now, and you and your wife are both retired, but I'm sure you keep busy with other activities.
We do. My wife is an LPN, so she still works a part-time job as a nurse in a private home. So she does that either 1 or 2 evenings a week, taking care of one young lady.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she has done that for a long time. I work a little bit part-time with a couple of men that have some rental property. So I try to do exactly the opposite of what I did for a living. And so I do their work, mostly just minor maintenance, a lot of painting and siding work and just things like that, which I really enjoy. We both volunteer for an organization called Love Inc.
Love Inc. I'm aware of.
Which stands for Love in the Name of Christ. And so it's a national organization, but it's an organization in this area. It involves multiple churches in both Waterloo and Cedar Falls. And so therefore those churches gather resources, and people can call in if needed and identify needs they have, whether they are food or basic other essentials like dry good things. They even are starting some things with some furniture. And so that organization, they follow up to make sure there's a need and there's a limit as to how much they can get. It's not an emergency service. But the many churches kind of come together to do that. And so my wife does the calling on that, and I do the deliveries during each week.
It takes many, many people in our communities to work in facilities like that. And there are a lot of facilities that are out there that help the needy people. And everyone is so willing to help in any way they can, or whether they can give monetarily or something from their homes that they don't use anymore. It's just a great need. It makes your communities come together and work together quite successfully.
Yeah, it is. It's a great organization, and you can just feel the people pulling together all in one way. And without a doubt, it's a good thing to be involved with.
Yeah. It is.
So we're involved with that, and we're also just involved very much in our own neighborhood with neighbors. And we have a 101-year-old lady that lives across the street from us and still in her home, and so we do things for her, lawn and snow and visit and some foods and things like that. And so just always remembering that there's a neighborhood too to reach out to.
Right. Same with our neighborhood here. Friendship Village is just one big neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we look out for our people on our floor, because we have 5 floors here, and we have the new building over there with 4 floors, and we have the 2-story beyond that, and we have many different facilities here, and we all look out for each other and keep track of each other.
We were commenting about that at the men's lunch yesterday, about people seem to have a favorite seat at the table for their lunch. So if it's empty, it makes you kind of wonder, well, I wonder what happened to Irene or whatever, and so maybe you go and check up on her.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to check up on our neighbors.
Yeah.
So it's nice when they think about letting people know if they're going to be gone or not going to be around for a day or two or gone on vacation or something, because we do worry about them. That has drawn our community close together, which is wonderful. That made me feel really great when I moved in here 7 years ago.
Jim, could you see yourself and your wife ever, and maybe in the years ahead, someday maybe coming to a place like this, Friendship Village?
We've talked about it because we have some friends that we have one of the ladies in the neighborhood that moved into New Aldea, and so we do go visit her and see her living situation, and she very much likes it. She's very glad she doesn't have a home to take care of anymore, and snow and lawn and everything. Yeah. And she has a very strong connection, just like you're saying, very strong connection with their chapel and
or
a place
maybe
to exercise.
You see yourself when you're 101. You'll
You'll
still want to be at home helping your neighbors.
Now we're not quite sure when that switches over.
Yeah.
So I'm the youngest in the neighborhood at 72, so
okay.
But I do believe that there is a time in the future where we probably would do that, and therefore, just like a lot of people that make those choices, one is just that you don't have to worry about your home anymore.
Sure.
If you're going to be gone for a while in the winter or a month or two in the summer, either way. but we've got those neighbors right now to take care of, so she's got to.
Yeah.
But I do see that where we could do that.
Yeah.
Sometime.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, we all come to that stage as we age a little bit, and we are thankful when people can stay in their home. But again, you find that there's so many responsibilities if you live alone in your home that have to be taken care of. So when you come here, you just leave those all behind you, which is
Yeah.
kind of nice.
Hey, we're kind of coming to the end of this. This has been a most interesting talk with Jim. Thank you for coming,
Thank you very much for having me.
for sharing your life, and it's good.
We hope our listeners have enjoyed this. We know that the people that are going to listen do not know Jim Thompson, but since I knew him and he was recommended as a good person to interview, I took that upon myself to call him and see if he would be a person we could interview, and he very much accepted it. And we're so glad because he had a lot to offer. We've learned a lot about taking care of others and just living in our communities as neighbors and wanting to have our future here also.
So if anyone out there listening can think of another question for Jim, go to Mary. Maybe she would know the answer since she knows him.
I have his phone number.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, let's just close with our usual thought for this day. May the good Lord bless and keep you until we meet again. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.